Okay, so we're doing this is session 3 of emotional poverty, and I'm Ronna Francis, and this is
Bernadette Carpenter.
that's Miss Carpenter over there, and she is going to start us off with a little review. So continue, Bernadette Carpenter.
Yes, ma'am. Okay, now, Robin, when you think about this, can you teach the hand model of the brain to a student? Do you feel like you could do that now?
I could. We actually used it in one of our special ed PLCs as well. They went over that with us to sometimes it can help us teach a student why they're reacting that way too.
Absolutely. That's great. That's good to hear. Which of the calming techniques will you use? Are there any specific ones? And if you don't feel comfortable saying, it's fine, you know. How is the brain both integrated and regulated? And think of your 5 students that you identified at the beginning of the workshop. Which calming techniques will you use with them? Is there anything you want to share on that? But I just ask you to think about that and ponder on that and maybe review yourself a little if you don't want to share it.
I honestly think you can't just use one technique because each day is different with these students, and what works today might not work tomorrow. So you have to be able to, use all of them, really.
I agree. That's great. I agree.
Yeah.
That's wonderful insight.
You have to have everything ready.
Have
Here's
to have
your
a
bottle of
toolbox.
water. Have you a case of water at hand? That's what I do with Bernadette. I give her water when she gets upset.
Sometimes she gives me Mountain Dew.
Yeah. That just makes it worse. Okay. What motivates bad behavior, self-construction, and inner self? Just one second here. The purpose of this section is just to understand what motivates bad behavior, and it's about self-construction. In other words, how does the amygdala get constructed? And we talked about that in our earlier session. So good behavior, bad behavior. Good behavior is motivated by self-compassion and compassion for others. I believe that. You believe that?
Yes, and we talked about that the other day. If you don't have compassion for others, then you're going to act out because you're not going to really care what other people think, or you're not going to feel sorry if you hurt their feelings or whatever. So compassion is a very important part of life, I think.
Bad behavior lacks self-compassion and compassion for others. And we've seen that, and sometimes when kids are misbehaving or they've, had some incidents where they're behaving badly, and some of them will all automatically just feel remorse, I shouldn't have done that, and some there's none there, they don't feel any remorse for what they've done or what they've said, no compassion whatsoever.
You can tell it's just not there. And Kim made a very good point. She said, because you don't care about yourself, so you don't care for others. And that's it in a nutshell.
Kim, you hit the nail on the head right there. You did. Self-construction builds the inner self. Inner self constructs the world in accordance with self-construction. The limbic system, which includes the amygdala, is pretty much fully developed on a structural level by age 3. Hence, it is called the toddler brain. The true self is the structure of the inner self. And it's important to note that although the amygdala is structured by 3, it's also restructured during adolescence because of the plasticity of the brain. It can be restructured all of one's life. So that's good to know.
There's still hope.
Okay, I like that. Inherited tendencies. And I feel like I've inherited a lot of tendencies, some from my mom, some from my dad. They could be good, they could be not so good. But anyway, so agreeableness, compassion, and politeness. That's probably from my mother. Okay, I'm not going to get into all that. Less agreeable, less compassion, and politeness. consci conscious conscientious.
Yes,
Am I saying that?
I think so. That's what I think it is.
Industriousness and orderliness. Yes, that's Bern. She is orderly. Unless you're talking about her car. It is not
It is not. I live
orderly
in my car, okay?
and less conscientious. Extroversion and introversion, enthusiasm and assertiveness. You know, I used to be really introverted when I was young. And then I guess my inner self reconstructed itself. And here I am today. So I can see that. Uh, okay.
And I think we can help kids to overcome some of that when they're introverted by
Yeah.
using the strategies, some of those that we've talked about, and there are many others. But I think that sometimes they just really don't have the confidence,
Exactly.
and they don't know, they're afraid of being wrong.
Mhm.
And I think that if we can show them that it's okay if you're wrong, everybody's wrong. You learn more from your mistakes sometimes than what you do right. So I just think that that's something we have to work with kids on.
That's right. And you know, the thing about that too is you have to build a classroom culture and a school culture where it's okay if you make a mistake, if you're wrong, if you ask a question that you wouldn't normally ask because you'd be afraid you were would get made fun of. But that's where you have your classroom structured where kids know that's not how we operate in this classroom, you know. So that part comes in with your procedures and your rules. And that would be part of your classroom culture. Neurotic or neuroticism, withdrawal and volatility. Volatility. What's wrong with me today?
I don't know. I have the same issue. So there we go.
And less neurotic, less sensitive to negative emotions.
I think sometimes that we can become that way. We may, sometimes we're more sensitive than others and we have to learn to handle it. But I think that over the years, we become less sensitive in a way, which may not be good in all cases. But I think that if we didn't build up some kind of
I know what you're saying.
barrier to
yeah.
that we would be withdrawn all the time
We
or
would
be
be-
ready to kill somebody all the time. So I think that's where it comes in when you do strategies, you teach kids strategies on how to handle their emotions.
Yeah, you can't you can't be so sensitive that you break down at every corner, everything. You have to
Mhm.
know how, like you say, have strategies how to handle that. And I do believe the more you see, the more you do, the less sensitive you are to those kinds of things. Uh, Kim, jump in anytime. Uh,
Or Mary
or
or
Mary.
Robin.
Yes, Mary. I use Mary so much, I feel ashamed.
Not
I'm
at
like, oh,
all,
Mary.
you all.
I'm like, oh, Mary will get that for us. Mary.
Uh,
Okay. Openness to experience, less open to experience and ideas. Okay. I'm kind of little both sometimes, but not, no, I'm pretty traditional, just whatever, I'm not going to jump off out of a plane or anything like that.
no, I'm not either. I'm open to things, I think, but to a certain extent, and
Unless that
I
you,
think that we have to teach kids that it's okay to try new things and to experience life and to learn about these things. But I almost think when you're less open to doing that, you kind of cheat yourself out of
that's true. That's true. When you're
experiencing things.
scared of doing things, you do kind of cheat
Mhm.
yourself out of that experience.
Mhm.
And that's like, I mean, like Kim's girl and Mary's girl and Laura Lee, they do all this traveling, all these nice, wonderful experiences. I'm like, geez, I wish I could have done that when I was
Mhm.
young. But then I'm thinking, would I have done it when I was young? But I wish I had that mindset like I do
Mhm.
now, like, you know, to have those kinds of experience and not be afraid to do those things. And I think like public speaking, different things like that, if you're talking about a classroom, some kids, they're afraid to get up in front of their classmates. But I think if you can kind of ease them into doing that, it helps them. It helps them be able to do that, kind of maybe face their fear. Um, I don't know. That's just some of my thoughts. Vern, you got something to add? You
No,
look like you're going to add something.
I agree. No, I was just thinking about it and thinking, I
Uh-oh.
was questioning myself, would I have been, I know that I'm not as brave as my daughter is. She will try things that I would never, because I am so, and I think it may be the way I was taught a lot, because, you know, we were taught that don't take a lot of chances, just,
Got to have that solid security. You can't do anything
mhm.
out of the
Norm.
norm. Go ahead, Vern.
When we're looking on this, there's a page 23 actually in the book, and I really wish we had shared that with you all. And I think we can probably make a copy of that and put that on there with it, Bronna, do you think? But
Okay.
it looks at the different ages and
Yeah,
when you start to develop these things, you know.
it's Erickson's
Yes.
developmental stages.
It is. And I'm sure you all are familiar with that, but like it says, the first 6 months, you trust or distrust, mother or caregiver. Basic trust is a cornerstone of a vital personality. Trust gives a sense of being okay, that one can trust oneself, that always remains subliminally all of one's life. And that's why when a kid starts out and they have a rough start, sometimes they have trust issues.
They don't have that bonding.
They don't
And we
have that
talked about
bonding.
that with some of the kids that are adopted from other countries. And I'm just using that for example. They don't have that attachment.
That is true. And then like the second 6 months, it says that it focuses on the sensory information. The self as an individual and the dependence on the environment, particularly the mother, who periodically attends to other issues besides the child. And, you know, I have a little great niece right now, and she loves us all and she's crazy over her daddy, but when her mama does something and is not in her sight, she loses her mind. So um, that was developed, I guess, during that period of time. And then if the child interrupts the mother's absence as withdrawal instead of trust, the infant develops distrust. So I guess that's where you come in and you have to reassure that child, it's okay, mom's coming back. And when they see over and over that you do come back and that you are there for them, then they're going to learn to trust, you know, with that. And it says the trust, and I think so many times mothers who work, they go through this. It says this trust is built not upon the quantity of time, but with the mother, but the quality. And I think that's a very good point, because sometimes we as mothers feel guilty, or we feel like, well, I'm not getting to spend as much time with them as I want to, but it's about the time that you actually do spend with them. Then when you look at the shame includes self-doubt, it talks about that, and that's like from the years 2 to 3. Child can either hang on or let go. Child uses I, you, and my. They're either obedient or rebellious, and sometimes those terrible twos can really, you know, come out. Shame and doubt come if the child is made fun of, cannot reach goals, and or if parents prove to be unpredictable. And I go back to kids who they're in foster homes, the parents have not provided them with the care they need. And even if they're in a good foster home, I still think sometimes they need that extra help, because that has built up in them where they were with their parents and they didn't provide them with the time and the care that was needed. Child needs to be, yes, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I think also with that, when you look at the idea of autonomy versus, shame or doubt, I think that's where that we're starting to have a real problem with like extreme helicopter parents. Because that autonomy, I mean, given that child, and Mary and I had this conversation the other day over lunch. Tom Brady's dad, I think his name's either Joe or Jim, something like that.
Mhm.
He actually works with folks on parenting, and he's obviously done a great job when you look at Tom, you know, that kind of thing.
Absolutely.
But you know, because I mean, he's a good, decent person, or for the most part, seems to. Who knows? But anyway, um, but he actually talks about starting around this age, around 3, that you start letting that child make decisions and get really confident in how to make decisions, because it's there that you're teaching them how to make the decision, you know, to be healthy, or, you know, whatever it may be. That way, later in life, when it's really important that they make the biggest decisions about not using drugs and not
Mhm.
engaging in underage drinking and all, and also really risky behaviors. You know, when you think about some of these kids
Mhm.
that, you know, that kind of thing has failed them. And like the example he gave, he said, with my children, he said when they were 2, 2.5, they started deciding what they wanted for breakfast. And it was like just the simplest of things, like, you know, what you're going to eat for breakfast, what are you going to wear that day? And like, he tells a story one day of one of his children, and it was a cold day, and they wanted to wear their favorite pair of shorts and their favorite t-shirt and their favorite galoshes, even though it wasn't raining. And I can't even remember if they wore a jacket or whatever. But anyway, once the kid decided all of this, and it was cold, you know, and the mother was like, "Oh my gosh." And he said, "No, they have to make that decision." So anyway, they went to school dressed like that. And he told the teachers this was an active decision, you know, kind of thing. Or he told the daycare, whatever it was. I can't remember the whole story, and I'm butchering this, I know. But anyway, so the kid was miserable all day, miserable, because
Mhm.
he wasn't warm enough, yada, yada, yada. So he comes back home. Of course, I know you guys are thinking now that there would not be the ability to let that kid make the decision, because people would be like, "We're going to take you down to the family resource room. We're going to get you a pair of pants and yada, you
And
know."
we're gonna have your parents jailed.
Yeah. And so anyway, so the next day when they got up and they were getting the kid ready, the kid said, "What's the weather going to be today?"
Yeah.
And they made that decision on what they were going to wear. And he says, when you let them pick their breakfast, but he said, most importantly, when you let them suffer for their bad decisions, you're teaching them the value of thinking through and valuing that decision, you know, kind of thing. And like in this case, you know, those parents that we get, "Oh, no, 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 don't touch that." It goes back to Jeff Foxworthy when he says, "Well, you know, the redneck way of raising a kid, you put that television on that little, you know, that little TV dinner tray of the
Yeah.
table. And if that kid keeps pulling on that cord, say he's only going to pull that cord once, you
Yeah.
know, because it's going to come off on him, you know."
It's true.
And I think, no, and I really think, I really believe, and you know, and we tried to do this, is that to let that kid, you know, see, you know, when you do something, this is going to happen, but do it within reason. Don't let them stick the fork, you know, you
Yeah.
know,
Exactly.
you know, in the outlet
In
and
the
that kind of
outlet.
stuff. Yeah. See, I couldn't think of that word, y'all.
Good girl.
We're struggling today.
But you know, I do think that, like I've always said, you learn more from your mistakes than you do from the things you do right. So sometimes it's very hard for me, and I'm sure it is for other people. I don't want her to, I never did, I don't want her to experience failure or to, but I've gotten better with that through the years, you know, and I've tried to teach her, well, if that happens, then this is what you can do, or that, you know, it's okay. The sun's gonna come up in the morning. But I do think any more parents don't want their kids to experience any, not all parents, but most of us want them to be happy all the time, not experience any controversy. And we have to, and it hurts us when they do, but we have to realize that they're never going to learn how to handle situations if we don't guide them in how to handle those situations. I think that we have to show them, just like he probably talked to him about the weather, you know. And so we have to guide them and show them options and how to handle things.
Good deal. So we're down to industry versus inferiority,
Mm-hmm.
identity versus role confusion. Anybody want to hit that one? I can see that in a family that we talked about, where we don't know who the boss is, or I don't want to say the boss, but who is in charge. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
See, we talked about that the other day. Which one did we talk about? That was Understanding poverty
I
or
believe
this
that
one?
was in the framework.
Oh, okay. Well,
Maybe.
anyway, so like the children, if a kid, I guess, thinks that it's in charge, let me look here. Whoops. Okay, I'm good. Oh, let me go on. Like role confusion. Explain that to me, Vern.
Role confusion?
I mean, I'm talking about like identity versus role confusion. And you're not the mom, you're not in charge. I'm the mother, I make the rules or I set the rules. And like Kim was talking about, but the decisions, that's a decision that the parent makes, you know?
Yeah, we talked about that, how that you can either be too hard, too loose, or you can help them think their decision through and offer them that, let them make some decisions, as Kim just said. Because that's that one where you hit the wall. What is that called? It was
Brick wall.
brick wall. The brick wall parent
So,
just says it's my way or no way. Kind of like my dad. You live in this house, this is the way it is. If you don't do what I say, you don't live in this house.
yeah,
And then you have that middle of the way parent.
the
that
jellyfish.
The jellyfish, thank you, Bronna. The jellyfish just can't make a decision, just here, there, everywhere, And then you have Bronna,
Oh, the backbone.
the backbone. And the
Sorry.
backbone, and the backbone parent does let the kid make decisions, and it's guiding them as they're making them. And, I was looking here in ages 4 and 5, going back to the initiative versus guilt. And it talks about how that's a time when they develop a sense of losing and loss. And it says if it's not fully developed, it will hamper and restrict initiative later in life. Source of apathy. If child learns it's not safe to try things. When you think about it having that much importance on them when they are older, I mean, that's pretty important. And then it also talked about, I'm thinking, right, it compares self to adults. My daughter, from the time she was little, she wanted to know the adult conversation because she was with adults a lot. And she would say, wait a minute, what'd you say? So I think they start to do that at that age. They start to compare themselves.
Okay, let's look at these in the classroom, how these kids would be in the classroom. First, trust versus distrust. Students with a strong self-construction, they tend to trust adults and see authority as a way to keep safe. I know that teacher's going to keep me safe. And they tend to do what the teacher asks them to do and follow the classroom guidelines. Students that are distrusting, that they lack the self-construction, they distrust adults and they think authority is suspect, like it's like a conspiracy against them. Autonomy and shame. If the kids have a strong self-construction, strong inner self, they can do the task. They think they can do the task. They could take care of it and be responsible for them, and they can ask for help. They don't see that as a weakness to ask for help because they have a strong inner self, a strong construction. And they may be, if they do not have a inner self-construction or self-construction, they may be unwilling to try. And we talked about this for fear of failing. And I have had that before, and may develop compulsive behavior to avoid the self-doubt. Something they know how to do, they may keep doing it over and over and over because that's what they know how to do.
And that could include acting out to keep from.
Yeah, doing some things that they're afraid they
that
can't
maybe they
do.
could think they'd be.
Yeah,
fail
because we've
at
always
you.
talked about kids who will act out if it's reading time and they can't read. They're gonna, they're gonna misbehave or something. Anything to take the focus off of the thing that they can't do, that they feel like they're failures at. And they may see themselves as victims. And we've had kids, it's all somebody else's fault. But everything if you have 10 incidents in a day and it's all somebody else's fault, it might be your fault. But they're
Might
very
be time to examine yourself, you
yourself.
know?
Yeah. And they're very sensitive to criticism, you know.
They
A lot of people are
struggle.
sensitive to criticism.
That is true. People struggle even with constructive
do.
criticism. I
No.
know. I feel your pain. Oh.
But anyway, then initiative and guilt, students that have self-constructed a stronger self-construction, they're motivated and they want to try to learn to do new things, you know. So they're like, I think I can do that, or I want to try that. I want to learn about that. They're curious about many things, you know. So um, less developed self-construction, they're apathetic if it's not safe to try things. You know, they got to be sure that they're going to succeed, that it's going to be safe, that they don't look foolish. Uh, they have to have all these, they have to be in control of all these things. They may develop a fear of losing, so they won't try. And I had this little boy, and he would not try to shoot a basketball, but I knew he wanted to, you know, but he was afraid that he couldn't hit it, you know. So I had the kids out in the gym when I was principal at bus duty, and I'd let them play games and stuff. So we'd shoot basketball. So I got him up there. I'm like, just try it, and well, when he hit it, it was like a whole new world opened up for that kid, and it was something that simple, you know. But did we lose Kim? Okay, she's gone. Well, she's off. So industry versus for inferiority, and this is in the classroom. Uh, Kids with the good inner self, they play, they learn to play and to cope with reality. That's like they're playing a game. It's okay if they let somebody else, they know somebody else gets a turn. You know, they're not going to go into a full-blown meltdown if somebody gets a turn. They're willing to put effort into the task. They want to try it and get it done. And they like getting appreciation from others. You know, I appreciate you doing that for me. That makes them feel good. And they like to do things by themselves. And you know, you have some kids which that's why I like Kagan. You can do individual, you can do group. I mean, and it is so good for kids. I mean, I know those strategies will develop a good inner construction of a good self image of kid, you know, for the kids. I know it would. But anyway, you have seen some kids like, no, I'd rather just work by myself. You know, some kids don't want to work in a group. And with industry and inferiority, less developed self construction. If no positive role model present to encourage, they'll quit. And I know you've had kids like this. You think, well, he wants me to hold his hand during every lesson that we do. So if you go over there and you help the child or you direct it or whatever, and it's the second you walk away to help somebody else, their hand goes back up.
Mm-hmm.
Miss Francis, I need you. You know, Miss Carpenter, come over here. They
Mm-hmm.
have to have that constant, um, somebody being there for them to encourage them. And if they don't get that, sometimes they'll just quit. If they don't have somebody saying, yeah, you can do it. And right here, you got it, you know. So fear-based teaching methods increase feelings of inferiority. That's like, you know, if teachers teach with fear, and you know what I'm talking about. If you miss one, you're going to get you're going to get 5 minutes out, time out or whatever. You know what I'm talking about though. So you have to, in the classroom present, you know, it's like,
Well,
it's
I
like
think,
teaching the standards. You have time,
Mhm.
you can redo it. You can do it again. You can try over, you know, it's not a one and done. So,
and I think that for years, sometimes teachers felt like they weren't teaching them to be responsible
yeah.
if they let them do it again or if they gave them an opportunity. But, I look at it and I guess I'm older now and I look back and I think about it. And to me, what's our goal? Our goal is to help them to learn the content and to be able to function in society. So if we give them those options to redo things, to learn, then aren't we doing the right thing?
Right.
You know?
And they will quit if they believe they are failures. You know, some kids will quit even before they begin because of the fear of failing. Identity and role confusion. I'm going to talk about this in the classroom. The self, if they have a strong self construction, they have the recognition of their peers. Oh, I see that, Mary's really good at this, or they have a sense of who they are. They know who they are, as much as a kid can, and they have a sense of a future story. What do you want to do when you grow up, or what are you going to do next year in school? They kind of have their future planned out, and that's especially for high school kids.
And I think that's important also, definitely for high school, but I think from the time we're teaching them when they're young, to teach them, what do you want your story to be? And what, if you want that to be your story, then this is what you have to do to get there.
Yeah, and it just depends on the kids and what age, how
Yeah.
far you go into the future,
That's right, right. And
Uh,
it may be that you're just going into the next year.
Yeah,
If
yeah.
you want to
If you want to be
in
a good
fourth
reader,
grade,
yeah,
okay, if that's your goal, then this is what we have, I'll help
Yeah.
you to get there, but this is some things you're gonna have to do.
yeah, the need to know, right. So role confusion is not sure who they are. They're often bullied, and they're hard to have a future story when you're not sure about yourself. Well, they can't decide, or they don't know. They can't see themselves in the future. And that's sad. So,
And that can happen in all classes, not just poverty.
oh yeah. Yeah,
You
this
know.
is just emotional poverty.
Yeah,
It's
because
anybody.
sometimes
Yeah.
in even, I think sometimes some kids that have been expected to be perfect, which many times comes from upper class, upper middle,
Mhm.
I think they have a
Will
hard time
be.
with that.
Yeah, that's right. They do. Intimacy and self-centeredness, strong self-construction. They have sustainable relationships with adults and peers, and they respond to an ethical sense. It's not right if I do that, or if I take Cindy's pencil, I know that's not right, so I'm not going to do that. They won't think about things like that because they know it's wrong. And less developed self-construction relationships are more temporary and changeable. Maybe they like Miss Carpenter today, but they don't like her tomorrow. They may develop a deep sense of isolation, and the deep sense of isolation that they're there all alone and nobody likes them, nobody cares about them. So they have that sense that they're just by themselves, and they may be depressed and vulnerable. So,
And that's where, kids will be acting out, or they possibly, commit suicide when they get to
yeah,
that
yeah.
point that they feel so, vulnerable and isolated.
And
Many
so
times
alone, yeah.
yes, and alone.
Mhm. And it says, what do you do in a classroom when a student appears to be stuck in a developmental place? And we have heard in schools, and I've even said it myself, what's wrong with him? My goodness, he's 17 years old. He's that, or he's 20 or he's 10 years old. Why is he acting like that? So we got to remember where they may be stuck emotionally, in which
And
developmental stage.
and try to use positive words,
Mhm.
to reframe how they see themselves, have a plan when you see a kid like that to help it to come, to think better of itself. And one thing I was looking at, it says all of these stages are instrumental in developing the inner self. And it is difficult to get to self-identity if earlier stages are not developed. So during all this, we're helping them to develop their inner self, which is so important because it is the motivation for compassionate behavior. So, when you start thinking about all that, and one thing I want to say on that previous, slide, it did say that, these are estimates. It's not always the case. They're prescriptive. They're not prescriptive, but rather descriptive. So,
I was reading this one of the scenarios in the book about a principal who had talked about this little girl who kept using the bathroom in the floor, uh, the bathroom in the floor. And her teacher was just like, I don't know what to do. And she was so frustrated with her, and the principal was too. But as they found out, the story unfolded, the child was in foster care and had been abused at the ages of 3 and 4. So that's where her emotional stage stopped, you know. So she might be in 4th grade, but emotionally, she's only 3 years old. And we see that sometimes, and we've talked about the psychological thing that's connected to uh, sexual abuse with bathroom,
Mhm.
so um, and so we think of ways that people used to get a 3-year-old to potty train. So you kind of have to do that with reinforcement with a kid like that. You don't
Mhm.
know, but you would think, my goodness, she's 10 years old. What's she doing? So um, and who you are at your deepest emotional level is your inner self. Why is the inner self so important? It is motivation for good behavior. So that is motivation for us. The motivation for good behavior is a strong inner self. A strong inner self is when the individual sees themselves as lovable, equal to, belonging, capable, worthy, compassionate to self and others. They got to be compassionate with themselves too. A weak inner self, a victim. I'm less than. I'm separate from. I'm not like them. I'm unlovable. I'm damaged. I'm helpless. And we have kids like that, and we sometimes we don't understand why that is. And so, all right. So here's some. I'll just let you read those. We've kind of gone through those.
Okay, stronger self-construction. Student tends to trust adults and see authority as a way to keep safe, tend to do what the teacher asks, tend to follow classroom guides. And when you have students who do not trust adults or authority, the best way to approach them is to offer choices. If you choose to do this, then you have chosen this.
This is what's going to happen.
This is what's
You
going to
got this
happen.
choice. This choice.
Mhm. Because they've learned to distrust adults and authority, they're more likely to respond to their own choices. So if you put it back in their hands, if you've got rules, for instance, and you say, well, if you choose to break this rule and do that, then what have you chosen? What have you chosen, when you do that? And therefore you avoid, as an educator, a battle with that student. And another tactic is simply to give them time.
Mhm.
Give them time, give them that whatever, just some time and you do some things so that they see they can trust you.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that is best is consistency in your classroom.
Absolutely, absolutely.
know,
I'll agree with that totally.
and then we've talked about this, so we've already discussed this. This, I know you don't trust me. You will find over time that I care about you. And I think providing a safe environment for them where they're not bullied, where you do what you say, where you have consistency, and they know you're there to help them, teach them, support them. I, Over time, I think they will see that.
And I can remember as a child, there were some bullies in my class. But I can remember when we had a sub, I always wanted to not have that other, I wanted a good sub. Because I
Yeah,
wanted somebody who kept the classroom under control and to where
and
those
kept us
bullies weren't
safe.
allowed to bully. I wanted to keep working and not have that free time, which is
Mhm.
many times when things like that happen.
Absolutely. Offer choices. Bernadette talked about that. And I think we've talked about this. Hey, we're moving right along. We've talked about the development. Autonomy, I can do the task. We've talked about that. We've talked about that. Hey, man, I should have waited on my slides. Okay, Robin, you want to talk about anything? Mary?
I'm good. I just love listening to you all.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Me too. I'm with
Oh.
Robin.
Okay, and we talked about this. Use play to learn to cope with reality, and that's where that role play comes in. That's why I like drama too. Plays and things like that, where kids they can be something else that they're not normally, and it kind of brings out I think it adds self-esteem to them or something. Especially kids who don't want to play basketball, who they're not cheerleaders, they're not, but they might like art and drama and music, where they can shine. And any of the strategies that Bern talked about in the slides before will help with this. Okay. And we talked about this. If no positive role model is present or encouraged, we talked about that, they will often quit. And we talked about where they are just, they have to have your attention. They have to see you. They have to know that every word they write is correct. And that comes too from some kids who have been so used to getting all A's that they do have a fear of failure, because if they've had all A's so far, what if they get a B? Everybody's gonna know, everybody's gonna think bad of them because they've gotten A's so far. You have seen kids like that, they get a B and it is a major meltdown, beyond anybody's control. Okay. If a student has a fear of losing, what is the worst thing that could happen? And that's what we could tell kids. So if you get it wrong, what's the worst thing could happen? You got to do it again, you know. Unless you're a pilot or something, we don't want to say that.
No.
Okay. Okay, puberty. Let's see. I'm gonna let Vern, you want to talk about that one?
Sure. Dear future self, today you told one of your friends that you would like to be a medical doctor. Do you know how many years of college that would take? He asked. You're barely making it through middle school. Being a doctor is another bad idea you have had. Give up. Now, would you want to say that to a kid, or would you want, maybe you could say, Dear future self, today you told one of your friends that you would like to be a medical doctor. Well, I know you like science, so that sounds like a great choice. Let's look at some of the science you can study. Being a doctor is a great idea. You will work hard. And not only, I think we say that to ourselves. We get all these big ideas sometimes, and I think really in puberty, it's very, that happens a lot. Or you say something and then they're like, oh, that was stupid. I shouldn't have said that. That was really
yeah.
stupid,
Yeah.
And when you get older, you really don't care as much. But,
Sometimes we still do.
yeah, well, we'd like to be better, but it just is what it is. But,
So mean.
but you have to look at it that they have to have that inner self that can reason that out and say, well, I do like science. So I think it'll work, So I think not only should we support them in telling them that and not being this negative Nelly with them, but help them to come to their own
No,
decision
and be
on
honest.
that.
Okay, let's see what we need.
Mhm.
Let's lay it out. What do you need to do?
Mhm.
Uh, and like step by step. And they're talking about kids in the middle school and high school. They often try on identities, and we've seen that like with the goth look, with the, some like to be hippies. They like to try that, because you've seen some that have gone through high school with a goth look, and then you see them now they're married with kids, and they don't have that. It's just something different that, maybe they're a fan of a group or something. And
And I think sometimes they want to be seen, maybe be seen,
Yeah.
in a sense, They
Yeah.
just want an identity.
Yeah,
That,
yeah.
you know,
And I think too, Bern, or all of us, that maybe they think this could be something, maybe they think I am different than everybody else, so I'm just going to show them how different I really am.
mhm.
I don't know. But if there is a psychological control, who are you versus behavioral control, what you do at this age, and then there's role confusion as to who you are and what you're supposed to do at that age. Okay. A puberty to 18, rapid growth, similar phase of upheaval like the infant. Key question, how am I seen by others? And what's more important than anything to teenagers? What their peers think about them, what their friends
Absolutely.
think about them.
Absolutely.
And, when parents have to drop their kids off half a block down because they don't want people seeing what kind of car you drive or what you parents have on that morning, it's real important how they're seen by their peers. And they have no sense of identity. And that's in the role confusion part. And they have a conflict within their own personality. Okay, the body and the brain are changing. Identity, who I am as adult information becomes a key task. So we talked about that. Okay, Bern.
Are we,
Oh, I'm sorry.
it's okay. I don't have control of the slideshow.
Oh, ha, ha.
I don't know why,
Okay.
but I don't.
But
I
I won't let you. No,
know.
I will
So-
let you. I will let you. I
It's
swear.
probably my error, to be honest.
So
What does this mean in the classroom?
Exactly.
In this, the identities, they need stronger self-construction. So if they have that, they have the recognition of peers, peers are looking at them. And we kind of went through this a little bit ago, but, have a sense of who they are, have a sense of a future story. So they're pretty much, they have their inner self developed. But now if they have role confusion and not sure who they are, they're often bullied. Hard to have a future story when you're not sure about yourself. I can specifically think of when I was in school. Probably a particular child, well, I can't think of a particular child that I feel like, that was their life. They were bullied some and, I think they probably didn't have a lot of confidence looking back on it. And they felt, just, like they were never gonna be anything. And I think that's where it's very important that we help them to get their story moving in the right direction.
And it's easy for them to be bullied
It is.
when they
And we try to, as teachers, we do the best we can with that, but there are times, and if that kid's already not feeling good about themselves, then, and the bully senses that, then the bully becomes even more, it
taunting.
bullies even more. And also, they see them as prey, and they see it affects them and it just gets worse and worse. So we have to be aware of those things.
Okay. Year 18 to adulthood. Dear future self, today you passed right by that group of kids who always eat together. You would much rather eat alone. This way you have spare time during lunch, learn during lunch break to try out new video games. Dear future self, today you asked a group of kids in your class if you could have lunch with them. One of them smiled at you and said, "Of course." This made your day. You will do the same tomorrow. See, you have the fear of, but you've got a reason that you're not going to ask him, you're not going to ask to eat with them. The fear is rejection, you know.
And so you come up with, well, it gives me an opportunity to watch my video games and to do that kind of thing. And I think we've all kind of done that at some point in our life. We've been in a class, maybe even in college for that matter, with people, maybe at your job. And you've thought, well, I don't want to be rejected. So instead of being rejected, I would just rather remove myself from that situation.
Mhm. Okay, intimacy and isolation, okay, we've got 6 minutes, but we'll finish this up right here. Um, Personality formation is mostly complete, building sustainable relationships and friendships, capacity for intimacy, development of an ethical sense, insufficient development of intimacy often results in isolation. That's when you won't let anybody talk to you, won't let anybody in. When you
And
isolate
most of the
yourself.
time that is for fear of being rejected
Mhm.
or being wrong or for
Or
whatever
feeling like
reason.
you're different than or separate from.
Mhm.
But even adults can learn some stuff. They can do some things, that will
Well,
help their
honestly, even as an older adult,
Yeah.
there are times that probably we all feel that way, but I think it's our job to, for instance, when you go through a divorce and you may think, well, I'm just gonna shut myself off. I'm not gonna let myself care, I'm not gonna get hurt like that again. But we have to realize that if you don't experience things, then you're not really living,
Mhm.
So, I think that it's really hard, 18 to 25, when you're 18 to adulthood, I think the earlier years are really hard to do that, but
Yeah.
you don't want to end up isolated.
I think that song, it's a Christian song, but Dear Younger Me, I love
Yes,
that song. I'm like,
me
if I could
too.
go back and tell my younger self, maybe I wouldn't have been so stupid. Oh, but I guess that's just, comes with that period of time development. But anyway, I'm going to say this last thing and then uh, we'll quit for today and we'll go with our next session. Intimacy and isolation, again, it's another continuum. It's the beginning sense of self, of who I am as an adult, both my own person and in relationship to others. Who am I to somebody else? If a person doesn't develop identity, then it's very difficult for them, like Vern says, to have intimacy because you don't know who you are, and it sounds like, some kind of poem or something. And like
But,
she's,
and it talks about that without intimacy, one becomes isolated. So it is very important.
yeah.
And another thing that I thought was really interesting, how, and I'm guilty of this, because I love to get on my phone and play those little games, and I love to look at Facebook and just see pictures and all that. But it says screen addictions can contribute to isolation. And I can see that,
Gosh.
because you get so caught up in that phone that before you know it, you're not paying attention to the person over there. And it's not really that you're meaning to ignore them. It's just you're caught up in your own thing. And I was gonna say this while ago and I kind of got distracted, but looking at this and thinking about it, sometimes we have to make that step out as adults with our peers. And we have to reach out because, who says who has to reach out first? And take that chance and bring them in with us. And I think that's just really important with our peers, with people we deal with. I try to be very conscious of that because I don't want anyone to ever feel left out or to feel like that I thought I was better or, I just really try to be conscious of that. And I think that's very important because I think adults
Yeah,
experience.
that's what you learn when you're 50.
Yeah.
Well, thank God I don't know that. But
Right.
anyway, I was thinking too, when I go to church, if somebody's in my seat, I'm like, oh, where am I going to sit now? Who am I going to sit beside of? That is, I don't know. That's just a part of being, maybe not sure about the situation. And so you can see kids doing that, if adults do that. And I had another thought and then I was going to wrap it up. Oh, Burnett was talking about the addiction we have to our phones, and we do. We have an addiction to our phones. Kids have an addiction to our phones. You know, we used to, if you went to a doctor's office, there were people there, you talked to them. Everybody talked to each other. Okay, you don't do that anymore, you know. Uh, and we've seen, I have one of those those, I've got a PowerPoint on mindfulness, a whole family sitting at a table and they're all on their phones, or they're all sitting on the couch and they're all on their phones. It's such an addiction that there's no more communication. Now you take younger kids who, you know, they're just developing their communication skills and they lose that face to face with people. You know, that's a complication. It's kind of a disability, really, you know, or I don't want to say that, but it is, I think it's harmful. And I'm guilty too. And sometimes I'm guilty if I'm in a doctor's office and I don't want to talk to anybody. And sometimes we do that. But my cousin the other day, he didn't have his phone with him all day. And he said, well, I nearly lost my mind. You know, that's how we are. And that James Gregory talks about the phone. When he was young, he said, we have one phone in the house. That's what we did. And when it rang, nobody wanted to answer it. It's like, oh God, you get it. No, you get it. I got it last time, you get it. Because you don't know who's on the other line because we didn't have caller ID. So you didn't take a chance on answering it. Now everybody has a phone with them. And if it rings, we got to break our neck to try to find out who called, who texted, you know, so that's a barrier, I think, to communication skills and intimacy and developing inner self. So on some level. Okay, we're done with this one. We still have a little bit left of this one, so we'll finish it up next time and then we'll go on to the next. We may have to have some more sessions. I'm not sure.
Robin, thank you for joining
Robin,
us.
you're getting a trophy. You know that, don't you?
You are a trooper.
I
We'll
need
have
a big
big-
trophy,
Yeah.
but you
It's-
all have been great. Like I said, I love listening to you. You're like a comedy show.
We're gonna put a big heart on your trophy now that you said that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, you all are great. And I love how you all always throw in your personal stories because that brings it to life and, lets us relate too.
Yeah.
Thank you so
Bernadette's a
much.
basket case. You know, we're trying to work with her, but there's only so much we can do.
There's
This is
always
true.
one everywhere. So yeah.
See, she knows.
She knows. She spotted me.
I dropped in the chat for you, Robin, the feedback survey link so that you can fill that out and it should email you your certificate for your time. So thank you.
All right. Thank you. You
We
ladies have a good
appreciate
week.
you.
Thanks.
Bye,
Have a good
Robin.
week.
See
Bye
ya.
bye, honey.
Bye.